Daha iyi bir gelecek için Cesaretin Var mı isimli oturum için Sayın Peter Fisk bizlerle. Sonraki iki oturumumuzda uluslararası konuklarımız olacak ve oturumlarımız İngilizce dilinde gerçekleşecek. So, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker today, who is going to facilitate the session named Do You Have the Courage to Create a Better Future? Peter Fisk is a global thought leader, best-selling author and inspiring speaker, whose career was forged into superconductivity lab, accelerated by managing supersonic travel brands, shaped in corporate development, evolved in a digital startup, and formalized as CEO of the world's largest marketing network. His distinctive approach is the future back and outside in, fusing insights with inspiration, creativity, and structure. Welcome, Mr. Fisk.
Thank you so much, Meheba, and it's great to be here with IMK today. So it's great to see everybody online. I'm going to spend about 30 minutes talking about how you can create a better future. If you'd like to ask any questions, you can do so online, and then I'll try and answer them at the end. But here's some thoughts for me to get started. You know, the big question I think everybody, young or old, senior or junior, should be asking is, how do you see the future? Have a better view of what you want the future to look like. Not just today, but to think about the future. And I've spent a lot of time over the last 20 years working with many companies in Turkey. So, you know, from my first project I ever did with Eczacıbaşı company through to Garanti, Sabancı, Arçelik, Tuna, Turkcell, Yapı Kredi, and many, many others, even small companies like Farplus and Asta Textile. So thinking fundamentally differently about what is the future of business for Turkish companies is something I'm truly passionate about. You know, we'll see more change in the next 10 years than we saw in the last 250 years, which is incredible. If you think about the last 250 years, how much changed? You know, from the steam engine, which transformed the ability to make mass production in factories, cars to come from villages into cities. The man on the moon changed our dreams as to what was possible. And then we move forward with the digital revolution of the last 30 years, where the mobile phone in front of our hand is more powerful than the space shuttle. And then we say all of that change, and we can have more change in the next 10 years, between 2021 and 2030. So we're in for a crazy time, a time of incredible change. But it's also a crazy time in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic. But what's really interesting about the pandemic, as well as all the crises, all the danger and all the difficulties, is that it has accelerated change. It's made change even faster. You know, some people say that we've had 10 years worth of change in 8 weeks. Certainly, if you're a retailer, the massive shift online to digital platforms for shopping, for working, for educating, for healthcare, and all sorts of other things. New businesses like Disney Plus, able to reach as many customers as Netflix took 7 years to achieve. Remote working becoming the norm. I don't think it will change afterwards, certainly not completely. And digital healthcare even more so, accelerated. You know, the vaccines which we are starting to see now, particularly the messenger RNA vaccine, will transform our ability to address issues like cancer in the future. So here's a word in Chinese. This word in Chinese is wei ye. It's 2 words, but it has one meaning. The one meaning in English is crisis. But the 2 words in Chinese mean danger and opportunity. So a crisis is a time of danger, but it's also a time of opportunity. So how can you seize the opportunities of a changing world? You know, we all know, if we've studied economics, that markets go up and down. They have boom times and they have more difficult times. And this is Schumpeter waves, how the economic cycles of the last 250 years have gone up and down. And you can see the cycles getting shorter and closer. So we have more turbulence, more uncertainty, and more change. But every time you have a downturn, a crisis, you get a new beginning. You get a revolution. You get something new. And actually, downturns are the time when most new companies are formed. If you look at the Fortune 500, 57% of the Fortune 500, McDonald's, Apple, Microsoft, Airbnb, Uber, are all formed in a downturn. If you look at patents for innovation, 92% of patents are filed in a downturn. So a downturn is a time when you dare to think differently. A downturn is a time when you dare not just to hide your head and think it's the end of the world, but actually it's a new beginning. It's an opportunity to innovate and to create something new. So now is the time when the next generation of companies are being created in Istanbul and right across the world. Now is the time when new business models, when new formats, when new heroes are actually being shaped, even in these difficult times. And if we look back over the last 12 months, we can see some fantastic companies who've done incredibly well. Obviously, the big technology companies, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, all becoming trillion-dollar company. Zoom, from China to WebEx, Eric Yuan suddenly became a multi-billionaire. Tesla, from 75 to $750 billion of valuation. Animal Crossing became the most downloaded game of all time. PayPal has become the most valuable financial services company, far bigger than companies like Bank Guarantee, Bank of America even, more valuable than all those traditional banks. And Disney Plus doing things which companies like Netflix took much, much longer to achieve. So we live in a time of revolution, a time of technological revolution, but also social revolution. Let's think about the technology first of all. We call it the fourth industrial revolution because it connects all the technologies together. How can you actually think about a digital platform with artificial intelligence, with IoT, with 3D printing? How does that start to change the world? Well, it means supply chains fundamentally change. If you're manufacturing clothing, for example, in Turkey and shipping it across the world, maybe it can be 3D printed in a different part of the world. Or maybe you can use artificial intelligence like Zozo Group from Japan to design the perfect clothes for the individual person. In fact, data is the biggest part of the fourth industrial revolution. Data is what connects all the technologies together. But ultimately, it's a human future. We still make the decisions as human beings. We still think about how can we apply these technologies in innovative, creative ways. Look at some of the companies on the recent few months. These are the clues. These are the signals about the future. Lamborghini. Has anybody got a Lamborghini? Camille, do you have a Lamborghini? Okay, maybe not yet. Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, so $120,000, that's all it costs. The biggest growth market for the Lamborghini today is actually Shanghai. So, fast growth in China. The SUV is its most popular model now. So in 57 years, 2020 was the most successful year. Or think of Peloton. It was only launched 18 months ago. Now it's a multi-billion-dollar company. You can go to the gym, you can work out, you can connect with your best friends around the world. You can have your personal coach. You can do it any time of day or night in your own home. Why would you go to a gym again? Or think about the multiverse of Fortnite. Anybody who plays Fortnite gaming online, you start to see not just games appearing on Fortnite, but you see music concerts. So, the latest hip hop bands playing on social media. You see sports events online on Fortnite. So platforms like Fortnite are the future of social media. not huge average platforms like Facebook and Instagram, but much more focused niche platforms, which we call multiverses. Or think about not just technology, but think about how can we create a better world? So creating fantastic new fashion from mushrooms. So this is the latest leather. This was launched this week by Adidas, by Stella McCartney, and by Kering, one of the most luxury brands in the world. And they together have created mushroom technology, which creates an artificial leather. It feels as good and it's as strong as real leather. It's called Milo. Or think about the big challenges in the world. So not just climate change, but social inequality and unrest. Last year, we saw Black Lives Matter spread across the world incredibly fast. Brands taking a bigger role, stepping up and saying, we don't accept this. So Ben & Jerry's ice cream, for example, launching a range of ice cream called Justice Remixed, challenging people to think differently about what is right and what is wrong and ethical in the world. So businesses and brands and their leaders have to think fundamentally differently. You know, I've spent a lot of my last 2 years working with Microsoft, which became a $1.5 trillion company last year under Satya Nadella, their new CEO. And he created a revolution in the company. He'd been there 22 years, Bill Gates was the leader, and then Steve Ballmer was the leader. But when he came along, he said, I want to create a different kind of organization for a new world. I want to create an organization where people think, where they care, where people can do what they want to do. They can unlock their talents, where we can experiment, where we can fail, but we learn from it. So he wanted an organization which was constantly learning. He called it a growth mindset. And many companies now are trying to develop a growth mindset. There's two mindsets really in business. One is a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset says that nothing will ever change. You can work harder, you can make things cheaper, you can make things slightly better, but banks will always be banks, or we will always sell things in the same way, or we will always make the same products, but slightly better. Or you can have a growth mindset, which means let's change things. Let's look differently. Let's take different perspectives. Let's try and experiment and see what happens. So what he wanted, Satya Nadella, was he wanted an organization where people didn't know it all. You can never know it all in today's world, but you can keep learning. And you all as students, you know, it's the challenge is not to know it all. The challenge is to dare to learn it, dare to experiment, dare to try new things, and dare to keep learning from what you find out works and what doesn't work. One of the great stories I am inspired by is Tan Le. You know, she was a Vietnamese refugee, and she had to leave her father and her brother in Vietnam in the middle of civil war. She got on a small refugee boat. It was sailing across the South China Sea, and then it ran out of fuel. She was almost dead. But then a shipping boat, an oil tanker came along, and they picked them out of the water. And they said, we will take you to Australia. And so Tan Le ended up in Australia as a 7-year-old girl. She couldn't speak the language. She looked different. She had no money. And she had to start from the very, very beginning. But that gave her more passion, more courage to try new things, because she had to work harder. And so she was trying, and she had more ambitions to achieve things than any of the other children in her class at school. She became a lawyer. Her mother was happy with that. But then she said, I don't want to be a lawyer. I'm fascinated by technology. She started to understand neuroscience in terms of the brain and how technology can connect to the brain. Today, 20 years later, from a refugee, she is now the world's leading neuroscientist. So using the brain to control your car, for example, when you drive your car. So Emotive is the world's leading bioinformatics company. So really what we need to do in today's world is to have the courage to step up, to see things differently, to look beyond our textbooks, to look beyond our own cities and countries, to see things differently. And when we take a different perspective, when we dare to see a bigger world, we see new opportunities. The impossible things become possible, or even our own potential. So if you want to increase your potential, increase your possibilities, the challenge is to take a different step, to step up in some way. You know, that's what Hamdi Ulukaya did. So from his humble origins in the eastern part of Turkey, you're stepping up and saying, he went to New York with nothing. And he said, I want to create a better yogurt. But I want to build a better yogurt, which is good for people, which is good for the environment, and gives a fair wage to people at the same time. I want to make money because that's the way I can invest in my company. But ultimately, all of his money, his millions or even billions of dollars of money, he wants to give away. He calls himself the anti-CEO. So being a successful business requires money, requires commercial success, but money isn't the answer necessarily. If you look at the big trends across the world, in this 10 years of rapid change, we're going to see huge trends. A world which is aging incredibly fast. So 60% rise in people who are over 60. How do we support them? Healthcare, pensions. A booming middle class, 10 billion people of Asia. So how do we reach that economy? If you want to find a new audience for your business, for your products and services, it's this emerging middle class of Vietnam, of Indonesia, of China and India. Cognitive technologies, so intelligent technologies, how do we work with them, not against them? How can they help us to be better humans? So we can do the creative things, we can do the dreaming things, and they can help us to make them happen faster and better. Dense living, people living in enormous cities. So 45 huge mega cities across the world today, 33 of them in China now. But within 20 years, the 3 biggest cities in the world will be in Africa, Dar es Salaam, Lagos, and Nairobi. How can you be part of that African growth? And then finally, this earth renewal, the huge challenge, not just of climate crisis or social inequality, but also as the world gets bigger in terms of population, we need 30% more food. We need 40% more water. We need 50% more energy. So we have to think differently about how do we achieve that. So we have to grow. We need more food. We need more water. We need more energy. We need a better lifestyle because that's what we aspire to. But we also have a fragile planet at the same time. And you can see over the last 100 years how we've tested and challenged that planet almost to its maximum. So we need to think differently about how can business be a force for good? How can we solve some of the big problems in a better way? This is Pat Brown. He was a university professor at Stanford, 59 years old, 10 years ago. And he said, I want to eliminate animals from the food chain. Animals pollute huge amounts of carbon dioxide themselves and then through destruction of crops and rainforests. So he created Impossible Foods as a company. Impossible Foods over the last 10 years has become the leading plant-based food company. But what he calls it is meat, because he makes meat, but he makes meat which is better. So if you want a truly fantastic burger today, it doesn't come from an animal. It actually comes from plants. And what Pat Brown has done is he's found the perfect enzyme which creates the same effect as blood, heme. And so it drips as you put it onto the grill. It smells like it is real meat when it's grilling. It tastes juicy and succulent like meat when you eat it. It's probably better than meat, but it's better for you healthily and it's better for the world. So creating better products which are better for the world at the same time, means that business can be a platform for good. Jessica Tan, she said, how can I have the courage to go further? She joined the largest insurance company in China, Ping An, an insurance company. But what are the assets of an insurance company? Well, really, it's a digital platform and it's customer data. So what could you do with a digital platform and customer data? You could do anything. And so she said, okay, I'm going to create the world's largest healthcare platform. And over the last 2 years, 1 billion people have joined her healthcare platform. So they come together on Good Doctor from Ping An. They have telemedicine, so you can talk to a doctor over with your smartphone. You can test out if you need to talk to the doctor, first of all, with AI diagnostics. And then if you do need some kind of medicine, you can go to a vending machine or a motorbike will bring it to your home. So completely different channels to market or delivery services. She also has a network of 5,000 clinics and hospitals, so physical at the same time. It's digital and it's physical. So reinventing the world of healthcare, thinking how can an insurance company become the world's leading healthcare company? So we see borders which are kind of blurred. You know, any company could do anything. Anybody could do anything in today's world. So my challenge, but also my suggestion for you as you set out on your careers is to shape the future in your own vision. Don't wait for somebody else. Don't wait for the future to come to you. Don't wait till you're old. Start shaping your vision right now. And there is no time better than 2021. You think about how the world has been shaped through the pandemic and the leaders who have done best. The leaders who've done best across the world over the last 12 months have typically been female. And think about what have they done differently? Human, compassionate, but also daring and brave at the same time to do things which not necessarily were popular, but which were good for their people and good for their nations and good for the world. So be you Jacinda Ardern or be you Kamala Harris, in terms of thinking, how can you help to shape a better future for your world? So I spent the lockdown writing a new book. It's called Business Recoded. It challenges people that the old rules of business don't work anymore. We need a fundamentally new way of thinking about how business can succeed in making money and driving profitable growth, but equally in creating a better society and a better world at the same time. And business, not governments, not NGOs, not charities, businesses are the best platforms to do that. So the book is about having the courage to create a better future. And I want to leave you with 5 things to take away. So the first one is that if you look at people around the world who are succeeding right now, they have a bigger vision. They dare to think bigger. You know, they're not just looking for 10% improvement, they're looking for 10 times improvement. You know, Elon Musk, when you look at SpaceX, his people who work for him, they're not thinking about how can I launch a rocket? That's just a small part of the journey. They're looking, how can I create a civilization on Mars? So think about your why. Think about your bigger purpose. Do not think about your what. You know, I work with Adidas, for example, as one of my major clients. Adidas never think about running shoes. They think about how can people run faster? How can people run further? How can people run better? It's about running, not running shoes. It's about the why, not the what. So when you think about business, think about why do you really exist? What difference can you make to people? And how can you help people live better lives? But also how can you help societies and communities too? Start from their world. Don't start from your world. You know, I worked with Harley Davidson. Harley Davidson is not about having their best bikes. It's actually about people having passion. You know, the typical Harley Davidson customer is 55 years old. He is probably an accountant. He probably has bald hair. He probably loves to dress in black leather and drive through small towns and scare the shit out of children. You know, that's why the most successful part of Harley Davidson is actually doing more for the customer than just the bike. The bike is what the company focuses on, but the customer thinks about the journey, riding together, going on vacation together. How can I enjoy the freedom much more? And actually they'll pay for services which help them to do that, not just the bikes. Start from the future back. You know, this is Zhang Rumin. He leads Haier, the largest home appliances company in the world. Think about Arçelik, but 10 times bigger. He says in 2025, he will give washing machines, he will give refrigerators, he will give them all away free. So what will you do, Arçelik? When he gives them away free, he will think about how can he make money from services. If everybody has his refrigerator, he can manage their food. He can become their nutrition advisor. He can help them cook better. If everybody has his washing machine, he can help to manage their clothes. He can sell them better clothes. He can become their fashion advisor. So thinking from the future, jump to the future, say 5 years, not too far, and then work backwards and say, if that's what I want to achieve in 2026, what do I start doing in 2021, this year? And it will be different from what you first think about. So start from the future back. But it also requires you as an individual, whoever you are, need to think differently. Yes, it's about having confidence and courage, but it's also about seeing things differently, learning different things, taking different perspectives, being prepared to go into places you don't know and things you've never done. That's what Daniel Ek had to do as he became the CEO of Spotify. He was not a good leader, but he had to learn how to be a good leader. So as the world keeps changing, you have to change yourself as well. So be prepared to challenge yourself, to disrupt yourself, and to keep thinking differently as to how can you reinvent yourself. And the final thing to take away is to have courage. Have courage to be more in this crazy, changing, challenging, but incredible world. Have courage to think about how can you do things which you never thought were possible, the impossible into possible. And in my book, Business Recoded, I talk about having different types of courage. So here are 3 buckets of courage. There's firstly the courage to try things you've never done before, to dare to do something. The second type of courage is to trust yourself. Maybe you don't know if you can do it. Maybe you don't trust other people as your business partners, but you need to have that trust. And the third courage is the courage to tell, to speak out, to say things, to explain things, to challenge things which perhaps you wouldn't have felt comfortable talking about before. So the courage to try, to trust, and to tell what you truly believe. So I think the big opportunity, the way, this time of crisis, danger and opportunity, is a moment when you need to have the courage to believe in better. When together we can actually create a world which is far better than we left behind. It's not about coming back to where we were. It's moving to a better place which we've never been before. So it's time to imagine. It's time to invent. And it's time to actually take action and move forwards. It's a time to be not ordinary, but as you look to the future, think about how can you be extraordinary? Do something special, do something more. So be bold and be brave and be brilliant. So a few simple thoughts, but I hope you can be. Good luck.
Mr. Fisk, thank you so much for such an inspiration presentation.
Thank you.
It's really a privilege to have you here. While we are approaching to the last a few minutes of the session, we would like to ask you a question. The world's largest companies were oil companies 20 years ago. But now the world's largest companies are technology companies. How long technology companies can sustain this leadership?
Wow, that's a good question. Great question. It really was, a time when traditional oil companies like Saudi Aramco, they were the largest company in the world in 2019. And now they kind of have gone down. What I think is really interesting, Camille, is that the technology companies are not really technology companies. A bit like Ping An, a technology company can become a healthcare company. A technology company can become a retail company. What is Amazon? Is it a technology company or a retail company? What is Ping An? Is it a healthcare company or a technology company? Every company today, I would argue, is a technology company. Technology is just the platform. It's the starting point to think about what you can do. And I think that's what you'll see going forwards over the next 5 years, is how these technology companies really start to become much more than technology. They start to play a bigger role in people's lives. So, I think lots of them will become healthcare companies. They'll become, or let's call them wellness companies. Lots of them will become mobility companies. So how can you kind of help people travel in all different ways? Lots of them will become retail or kind of retail and entertainment and education altogether kind of companies. I think if you look at the super apps like Grab and Gojek from different parts of the world, they're some of the really good examples of the types of companies which will become the next heroes.
Thank you very much for taking the time to answer the question.
If anybody would like to send me an email afterwards, that's my email, peterfisk@peterfisk. So feel free to ask me questions by email or LinkedIn. I'm very happy to.